you don't really know who you are or what you are until you put a really big challenge in front of you.
Fear is an asset and ally here to help you be magnificent.
This crazy, silly, stupid idea to run across the Sahara Desert.
You did make it this time, but you said if you didn't make it, you would try again and again.
Everybody's connected to nature, connected to music, to their families, and now we're going to build a world that doesn't have racism and war and starving kids.
I kept telling myself, run at it, and just keep smiling.
Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to The Extra Mile. My name is Gene Gurkoff. It is a beautiful morning in New York City. It's about 6:30 in the morning. Running on the East River. Sun is coming up over the east. Lots of people out jogging, doing all sorts of exercises all over the river. It's such a beautiful place to run. And I am really excited for today's episode with a friend of mine, Kenneth Chabert. I met Kenneth probably 6 years ago now, and he and I instantly clicked. It was a very chance meeting, and we've been friends ever since. We stay in touch through the years. I love what he's doing. He's got an incredible life story, which I'm going to let him tell you about. He grew up in the Bronx, won a scholarship to Providence College, he's had a successful career, and he started something called the Gentlemen's Retreat, which I think is just fantastic, and I know that you're going to enjoy hearing about too. So I was really glad when I bumped into Kenneth a few weeks ago. I was like, oh man, got to get you on the podcast to share what you're up to. So we met in Central Park, had a beautiful walk, and I'm just really excited to share this with you. Before we jump into it, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Slow Mag MG. Very appropriate actually right now, because you went here, I'm running on the East River, 6:30 in the morning, it's already probably 80 degrees, it's muggy, I am sweating like crazy. I'm a big sweater. And everybody knows, when you're running, when you're being active, and you're sweating, you gotta hydrate, and you gotta replace your electrolytes. Everybody knows about potassium and chloride and sodium. Not everybody thinks about magnesium, but magnesium is really important. I've been really into magnesium ever since I started doing Ironman, like back in 2004, because it's so important for proper muscle function and recovery. And I actually started retaking magnesium supplements a few years ago too, as like a natural sleep aid. It's really helpful to help you get a good night's sleep. So when I saw this company, I was like, that would be a great company to partner with. Reached out to them. So glad that they've been willing to partner with us this year. They're a great partner. Highly recommend them. Obviously, nothing of what I'm saying has been reviewed or approved by the Food and Drug Administration, but magnesium is important. Slow Mag MG is where it's at. So give them a look. If you're out there running in this heat, if you're looking to get a better night's sleep, Slow Mag MG, can't recommend them enough. Huge thanks to them for partnering with us. Huge thanks to Kenneth for sharing his story with all of us. Huge thanks to all of you for joining us wherever you are. Turn up your volume and turn on your charity miles. Come along for the walk or the run with me and Kenneth Chabert in Central Park, New York City. Every mile matters. way to roll into the podcast, right?
Definitely. It's a good feeling. He's talented.
Yeah. All right, Kenneth, we're rolling.
Oh, man, I'm excited.
So, just got to talk into the mic.
Okay.
Kenneth?
How am I doing?
You're doing good.
All right.
You look good. So, I'm excited for this podcast. Really excited that I reconnected with you last weekend. But just to kick us off, can you visually, audibly, spiritually describe for people who are walking along with us right now where we are?
Yes. Central Park is very green. There's a lot of people in front of us moving past us. Say it's about maybe 79, 80 degrees. It's not too humid, though. It's cool with a breeze.
Nice.
Got the drumming in the background, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so that music that you hear in the background, that drumming is my friend Saison and Showtime, kind of like famous Central Park drummers. I take my son Max up here. He likes to watch them drum, and they let him sit on the drums with them too, so they're really nice. So kind of became friends over the last year. Wanted to kind of open up the podcast with a little groove in the background.
This is a New York energy. You got to love it, man.
So that would be
the
fitting.
noises, the energy, the people, the colors. That's what New York is all about. So
we're kind of walking. I can't remember the part of Central Park that this is called, but it's like, to me, it's one of the most beautiful parts because you've got these trees on either side that kind of line it and then arc over. It's kind of like we're walking in like a tunnel of green.
Right.
There's all these like artisans on the side with different types of paintings and kind of tourist tchotchkes that they sell.
Yeah, there's a ton of paths, so you can go left, you can go right, you can go back.
Very green right now. In the fall, it's spectacular. These trees change all the colors, and it's like in the winter, if there's snow, it's like there's all these like iconic pictures of where we are right now that people probably can put in their mind. But it's one of my favorite places in Central Park. Glad that you came down here to meet me.
Oh, man.
So just to like give the little context before we launch into it, I met Kenneth probably like 5 years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago, because it was very early on in Charity Miles. Kenneth was working at a company called Alex and Ani, which makes jewelry, and I had gone up to meet with them to pitch them to sponsor us. They never did sponsor us, but Kenneth...
But I stole your heart.
But Kenneth stole my heart. But I met Kenneth, so Kenneth was there. I don't know what it was, but we were kind of talking, and then we went out for lunch together just because I thought he was a cool guy. He told me his story, and I was like, wow. And he told me his vision, and I was like, really wow. So, we've stayed in touch through the years, on again, off again. And last weekend, we were both at this conference, and the second I walked in, he comes up to me. He's like, my man. I was like so excited to see him, and I was even more excited when he filled me in on everything that he's doing. So I was like, yo, we got to get together. I would love to, share your story and your vision and what you're doing to all of our members.
I appreciate it.
So why don't you just start to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and, how things started for you.
Yeah, so I'm 32 years young right now, and really focused on my passion, which is the Gentlemen's Retreat. But I grew up ultimately in the Bronx, New York.
Okay. And we'll get into what the Gentlemen's Retreat is later, but you grew up in the Bronx.
Yeah, grew up in the Bronx. Had an amazing family, amazing mom, amazing dad, that always kind of emphasized education. And I think my mom really instilled kind of the leadership in me to always follow what I felt was right and to stand on my own too and figure out what leadership was for myself. But when you grow up in the inner city, I think that there's something that you have to deal with called the duality. And so if you do embrace education or want to get out, you have to figure out this balance between sometimes maintaining a reputation in your neighborhood, because that's the currency and that's like the social capital. But then on the opposite end, you have to do very well in school in order to get out. So you got to focus on getting a scholarship. And so a lot of my life is that balance between that duality, because I, in 2006, had my ticket out of the inner city. I got the scholarship to Providence College, and that was a way for me to build a legacy for my family. Skateboard in the back, I like it. But right before getting that scholarship, I ended up getting caught in my neighborhood with a gun. And so once again, that's that duality that I'm talking about, where no matter what you do, even if you are a great kid and even if you want to get out, you still have to survive in that space until you're able to accept that scholarship. And so
why did you have a gun?
Very good question. So I had a gun at that moment or in that time because my family was really into gangbanging, and at the time they were at the top of a particular hierarchy of a certain gang. And so it was one of those nights, it's like a Saturday night or a Sunday night, I can't remember. Everybody's outside, And there's just a lot of commotion and a lot of things happening. And so I get this call from my cousin, and he says, come up the block. So I race up the block. And mind you, I don't know what's going on. The last thing in my mind is that my cousin's going to, give me a gun. But he does. And so he says, put it in my pocket. And I think for me at that time, having respect in the inner city was probably the most important thing, having respect for my neighborhood. And so when you carry a gun in the inner city, it is a feeling of power, of control, because you can do anything, right? Like, no matter what the situation is that is coming towards you, and if something's going to harm you, you can handle it with that weapon. So yeah, it was just a moment of a lot of power, and one thing led to another, and I end up getting thrown against a gate, and it's a police officer.
The second he gave you the gun, or you
no,
were
not the
carrying it around in a while?
I had it in me. I had it in my pocket probably for about, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes. But where we were walking to, there were just a lot of people, and there was a lot of commotion. And apparently a fight had broken out at this diner in my neighborhood, because I live by 170th and Townsend, so it's by the 4 train. And yeah, so there was a lot of commotion. There was this fight taking place, and my cousin gave me this gun. And when I get to the diner, all of a sudden there's just cops. I hear the sirens. Next thing you know, I'm getting thrown against the gate. And see, the gun was in my left pocket, so it felt surreal when the officer put his hand in my right pocket, because I thought it was a dream. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is just a dream. Like, I'm going to be able to go home. And when he puts his hand in my left pocket and pulls out the gun, I've never been in quicksand, luckily. But I'm pretty sure this is what it feels like, where you start to sink into the ground and you can't do anything. Like, your mind is telling you you have to move, you have to pivot, but you just can't. Like, all the weight is just on you. So I'm literally feeling like I'm sinking into the ground. So I get handcuffed. And one of the other moments I remember is looking to the left and seeing a lot of my friends from my neighborhood and the disappointment in their face that I got caught with a gun. Like, the Kenneth shouldn't be here. I'll never forget that. So it was a tough time because I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I got caught with a gun, which to me at the time was probably the worst thing that could happen. So I get bailed out, luckily. I don't have to spend the whole weekend in bookings or central bookings. And I come out to my mom and my dad, and I'm just in tears because I feel like my whole life is down the drain.
At this point, you already have your scholarship?
No, at this point, I'm working towards the scholarship.
Okay. And so you're in, what year are you in school?
So I'm going into senior year.
So it's like you're going to be a senior in high school.
And there were conversations about the scholarship, and the goal was to go to Providence. Like, there was this whole game plan kind of lined up, and I had the grades. I just had to.
Was that, like, of your friends in your neighborhood, were other kids as committed to education as you were?
Not really. I mean, a couple, but out of all my friends, maybe 10% of them were focused on education. So that's like maybe 2 or 3.
And so they had to face that duality too.
Yeah, correct. But everybody faces it in different ways. So not everyone is going to pick up a gun. Not everyone's going to be a gangbanger, but some people will pretend that they hate school. Some people will try to hang out with the gangbangers and the drug dealers to kind of fit in and ultimately get caught up in a situation that they really shouldn't be in. So it just manifests and it plays out in different ways because ultimately, you don't get the validation for being educated, for wanting to go to school. You get the validation from doing the things that everybody else in the neighborhood is doing. And so that becomes very difficult because then there's this question of, well, what is my identity? And how do I balance who I am with who I have to be in order to survive in this space? So I was lucky. I remember going into the courtroom and getting in front of the judge and the judge telling me, we're going to give you probation. You can plead guilty in the 3rd degree, which meant that I didn't have the gun in an attempt to use it. I think the other thing that was really lucky was that...
Can you say that again? The judge gave you the option to plead guilty in the 3rd degree?
Right, plead guilty in the 3rd degree, which means that I wouldn't have a record. I would be on probation for 5 years and then the record would be sealed. Mm-hmm. So ultimately I didn't have the gun in an attempt to do something with it. Like I wasn't going to rob anybody. I wasn't going to shoot anybody. But the luckier piece of that, and I think to me the scariest part about it, was that before they can come up with that conclusion or offering me that deal, they had to do a ballistics report on the gun. And so remember, I got this from a gangbanger, somebody that was out in the streets at the time. And so
it's your cousin.
Right. And so it could have came
And so
back.
did he feel like terrible, or was he like, that's just the way it is?
I never really had that conversation with him. I don't know. I think in that environment, you're very focused on you and kind of your life. You're not really worried about if you're messing up somebody else's trajectory.
Right.
So I would just have to say that he didn't get caught with the gun. That was it. So I was pretty much on my own, or at least, my mom had my back and a few other folks. But yeah, had the gun come back dirty with a shootout or a murder on it, it would have ultimately been pinned on me. So I was lucky that he had just bought that gun. And that, I swear to you, was the scariest part, because I'm thinking this gun is coming back with something on it, and I'm getting pinned for it. And that's it. Because what am I going to say? I got caught with the gun. I can't say I didn't have it. I can't say I didn't use it. So that to me was the scariest part. But
whoa, I got like tight in my chest right there.
Yeah, it was a tough time for me.
How long was this going? Like, how long did it take from when you were caught with the gun to like everything was resolved?
I think like maybe 6 to 8 months, because
so you're living with this for like a year, half a year.
Yeah, mind you, I'm in senior year of high school and I have to keep my grades up. How I did that, I do not know. And a lot of it is a blur for me too, because I think it was so traumatic. It was so just emotionally heavy that I forgot about a lot of it,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's nothing scarier than being in a courtroom.
Did you ever talk to your cousin again?
Yeah, years later, and I actually saw him, I think like a year or 2 years ago. But I don't have any animosity.
Right.
I think that luckily for me, I turned that whole situation into something very positive, and so.
So the judge, he gives you this option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
third degree. Yep. So, and 5 years probation, and then once I'm done, no record, everything's sealed. So yeah, I go to college, and college is different.
You got into Providence.
Yep, I got into Providence College.
Got your scholarship.
Got the scholarship, which saved me because, they saw. Well, I feel like the judge was he was just open to not putting me in a box or looking at me as a statistic or a stereotype. So he saw that, yes, I got caught with a gun, but on the opposite end, I got a full scholarship. So something's wrong here.
Right.
Like there's a huge dichotomy between the gun and the scholarship. So I just felt that he just took a chance on me. And then at the time too.
Did you ever keep in contact with the judge?
No.
You should write him a letter or something.
That would be great, right?
Do you remember his name?
Invite him to a gentleman's retreat dinner.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we can find the info. I mean, it's 2019, but
right.
Now I've never looked, man. And I think part of me too, just like it's easy for me to talk about this.
Yeah.
But I think part of me just
wants to put it behind.
Yeah, I have it at rest, because sitting in a cell by yourself is not something I would want anybody to do. And then being in a courtroom and having a judge have complete control over your life it isn't natural. It doesn't feel good. You just don't feel like yourself.
Right.
It's like that. I think what makes us human is that feeling of freedom and exploration. And when that's taken from you and you're kind of conditioned and put in this box, very difficult to handle.
Huh. So. I can't even imagine.
I don't want to imagine.
Yeah, I don't want to imagine. But so you go to college.
Right, I go to Providence College. And that in itself was bittersweet.
What were you looking to do at Providence?
So I took up management. I wanted to, make money, do some type of management, maybe be a manager at a company, or part of me was always an entrepreneur. So when I got to PC, I think the biggest challenge was the fact that the stimuli that I used to get from being in the inner city, I was no longer getting. And even though I come from this very dangerous environment, I was used to it. So stepping into this space, which is Providence College or Rhode Island, even though it's safer, it actually gave me a lot more anxiety because I wasn't used to it.
Huh.
So yeah, there were a lot of challenges being the only
There's some pretty rough parts of Providence that you could go hang out in.
No, yeah, for sure. But even that's still... No, that's a good point, but it's still not the Bronx. I wouldn't know the mechanics or how it works the way I know how the inner city of the Bronx
Different
works.
language.
For sure. But yeah, even that was difficult being at PC, being the only minority in certain classes. And I really paid attention. I think I was lucky in a sense because I was always aware of things. And I remember being in classrooms and having the answer to a question but not wanting to raise my hand and thinking about why don't I want to raise my hand. And one of the conclusions I came to is because when you come from the inner city and you're kind of navigating that space, you don't want to tell people a lot of information. You don't want to give people a lot of information about yourself because then they can use it against you. So a lot of it is like defense most of the time, and then there's offense in certain situations. And I'll give you a clear example. I would say like maybe about a year ago, I bumped into somebody from my neighborhood that I probably hadn't seen in, I don't know, 8 to 10 years. And he was referring to me by like my nickname. And so it took me a while to turn around because nobody uses that nickname with me anymore. But I turned
What's the
around.
nickname?
Yeah. This is a podcast, man. I love you though.
Okay.
So
You'll tell me later.
Yeah. Off record. So he uses the nickname, and it takes a while for it to register, and then I turn around. I'm like, oh. So we start talking. I use his nickname, and then it's a quick 3 to 4 minute conversation. But the most powerful part about it was he says, "Yo, what was your name? What's your name?" So in that time span that I've known him, growing up, in the Bronx and in the inner city, not once did he know my real name, and not once did I know just knew him by nickname. So it's things like that when you step into spaces like Providence College or any other school or an organization that one from the inner city has to figure out how to manage and how to balance. It's this idea of the vulnerability, because it's very different coming from, the space that I come from.
Wow. So, did you like Providence College? Like, was there a specific reason that you wanted to go to that specific college?
Yeah, they gave me $100,000. I had to go.
But I mean, you could have applied to many schools for a scholarship.
True.
Why did you choose that one?
I think at the time I was very influenced by my guidance counselors, and they told me that was the better choice for me. And I trusted them, so I went to PC, and I enjoyed myself those 4 years. I think the challenge was maybe the first year, the first 2 years, where I realized, okay, I'm at this really good school, and it's really academically challenged, but I'm not academically prepared for it. So that was one of the things that I realized was coming from St. Raymond's, even though I had straight A's and I did well.
St. Raymond's was the high school
in the Bronx, right.
Even though I did private school?
It's parochial. Yeah. So even though I did well at that school, it didn't translate into doing well at college, because there's a whole different system that I wasn't prepared for. Mm-hmm. How many hours you have to study? When I was in high school, I didn't have to study every day for an hour for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I studied maybe a week, 2 hours here, 3 hours there, and then A on the exam. Mm-hmm. But no one told me that. So it took a lot of...
Probably naturally gifted.
It took a lot of transition and a lot of learning how a lot of my friends that came from the same socioeconomic backgrounds, because a lot of the students at PC came from wealth, came from legacy, because their father or their mother or their aunt, they had this family legacy at PC already built, already knew the system and already knew how to navigate it, but I didn't. I was stepping into a completely different space. So it was times like that, in those realizations of being in class or working on an essay or taking an exam, that I would say to myself, man, very uncomfortable space to be in, and I was way more comfortable being in the Bronx. And at times, I would actually miss being in the inner city, although it was dangerous.
Were you able to connect with the other students and make friends there?
Yeah, so in the beginning, naturally, I gravitated towards all the athletes because we came from different inner cities, so similar stories, similar backgrounds.
Does Providence College have a lot of athletes? Doesn't seem like a football powerhouse.
No, you had the basketball team, men and women's.
Okay.
So connected with them. Connected with the folks from the inner city, like on the volleyball team. Like basically, I connected with anybody that was from the inner city, whether it was sports or not sports. It was automatically a connection because we came from a similar background. We know the struggles and we know a lot of the narratives that people around us share. And we were sharing in the same narrative. We were the ones that got out. Right. We were the ones that were facing the adversity and either being appreciated for it by our parents or being ridiculed by our friends for it because, we chose a different path. And so that also becomes difficult to navigate because your friends look at you and they say, well, we came from the same place. Why are you getting this opportunity and I'm not? So how do you explain that? What do you say?
I don't know. What do you say?
In the beginning, it was early on, like when I first went to school, it was challenging because it almost feels like you're leaving everything behind for something brand new that you don't know whether or not it's going to work out in your best interest, right? So I'm stepping into Providence College. Everybody comes from the same neighborhoods, from the same socioeconomic status, cronyism, nepotism, like you name it, it was all kind of there.
And to be fair, some of them also work to get there.
No, yeah, for sure. No,
not everyone is there.
No, not everybody, but I mean, it was more than I've ever seen, more than I've ever been exposed to. So once again, it's just a challenging environment. So you step out of the inner city, you step into a new space, and there's just conflict.
So was that like actually your impression? Like looking around, you see like all these. It might be different now, but like putting yourself back into your shoes back then, you're looking around at all these white kids at the college who don't come from the inner city. Mm-hmm. Are you assuming that they all got there because of some cronyism or nepotism or legacy? Was that like your feeling, or?
I don't know if it was my feeling, but there was a huge disconnect. I think that, there were situations, and obviously over time I built friends with, many people, different genders, different religions, etc. Because Providence did have diversity. It just wasn't a lot, but you were able to step into those spaces. But I do think that it was very evident that you were the poor kid at Providence College if you came from the inner city. Because I remember my friends driving Benzes and swiping cards at the bar, swiping cards at the bar. And I think that was one of the first times I realized, okay, maybe I did come from a poor space. Because my mom always had a well-maintained home. My mom always made me feel rich. But it wasn't until I got to PC I started to realize, okay, well, there's a different type of rich that exists out here. But no, I don't think I looked at everybody like that. But when you're in a space that's unique, I think in that way where a lot of people do come from money, you start to question, like, okay, what is this all about?
And what did you learn about what that's all about when you actually got to know some of those kids? Did they prove you wrong? Did they prove you right? Did your initial impressions of them evolve at all?
Yeah, I started to see the similarities. I remember kind of having this conversation with one of my friends about his father who was really successful but was never around. And then relating that to how, some of my friends grew up in the inner city and their dads were never around. And so what were kind of the consequences of that, or what were the pros and cons? So it was, things like that allowed me to see similarities. I think overall, when I was at PC, I started to learn how to just connect better with people from all different spaces, which obviously plays a huge role in what I do now.
Right. So I'm seeing like a trajectory into,
Yeah, but it was.
I know you now in the Gentlemen's Retreat, and you kind of your vision has.
Yeah, so it was the exposure. It was the experiences of being around different groups, being in different spaces, learning the mechanics, learning how to adapt. So overall, Providence College was one of the greatest experiences of my life because it taught me a lot about the real world. It showed me something completely opposite from what I grew up in, which allowed me to develop certain talents or certain skill sets.
And at what point did the idea for the Gentlemen's Retreat start to come in?
It's always been there.
Spoke this way.
Yeah, it's always been there. I've always been lucky enough to question things growing up in the inner city. Why do we hang out on the corner all the time? Or why do we walk up and down the block? Or why do we, not look at things a certain way? And why do we react a certain way growing up in our space? So, yeah, for me, the Gentlemen's Retreat was probably something lifelong, something that I've always attached myself to, and I think ultimately have lived prior to creating it. But yeah, I think it was just birthed out of the fact that I just knew a lot of gentlemen from the inner city that didn't make it.
Well, let's talk about, actually maybe give some context to that. What is the Gentlemen's Retreat?
Yeah, so the Gentlemen's Retreat is a program that I run. I call myself the Choice.
That you created?
Yeah, that I created. I call myself the Choice Architect. And it teaches inner city kids the art of being gentlemen through the use of emotional and conversational intelligence. And so what we do is we take cohorts of gentlemen from the Bronx and we bring them out to Providence, Rhode Island. And they do any and everything a gentleman does. So they'll stay at a nice home or a mansion. We get them the best breakfast, lunch, and dinners in different restaurants. They take workshops in emotional and conversational intelligence. And then the goal over the last 2.5 years was to get them into top colleges and universities in the country. So we have gentlemen that are going to Wake Forest. We have a gentleman with a full scholarship to Brown who'll be entering there this fall. Another gentleman at Cornell. But it's evolving now. I think that over the last 2.5 years, what started off as this concept of giving gentlemen from the inner city opportunities that a lot of kids from the inner city don't normally get, or experiences that they don't normally get. It's evolved into them actually taking on experiences that most people don't get. So it's raised the bar on my perspective and what I want to do and how I'm seeing it and how we're interacting with different organizations and different experience partners.
So what are some of the experiences that most people don't get that these gentlemen are fortunate enough to experience? And then how does the experiencing of these experiences open their eyes or change their worldview or impact them?
Yeah, so I've coined powerful first experiences.
Powerful first experiences.
Correct. So doing something you never thought you would do for the first time and a place that you never thought you would be in for the first time. And so some of the experiences that they've taken on most recently would be when they went to Montana for the first time.
So you took how many kids out to Montana? How many gentlemen out to Montana?
Yes, thank you. I took 8 gentlemen.
8 gentlemen?
Yeah, to Montana. Half were seniors getting ready to go into freshman year of college, and then the other half were from my original cohort. So they're getting ready to be juniors in college. So an amazing mix. And I mean, first 30 minutes that we were out in Montana, we're at Paws Up, which is this beautiful luxury resort. They're on ATVs riding through I don't know how many thousands of acres. And there's horses, bison, elk, just all of these different animals running past us, similar to like a safari. So mind you, these are gentlemen from the inner city who have taken on other powerful first experiences, but their first 30 minutes in Montana is that. So that to me is a powerful first experience. I think that what
are they thinking? Like, I mean, because even like I'm thinking of the movie City Slickers. You ever see the movie City Slickers with like Billy Crystal and like
no,
a bunch of like the inner city corollary to City Slickers.
They loved it because that's something that most people don't experience, but I think two
most people, not just most.
No, yeah, just most people. Right, most people don't experience. But I think that they were very excited, one, because they're doing it together. And that's the beauty of this, is that they come from the same space, right? They come from the Bronx, they come from the same high school. So they've been through similar situations. But for them to take on those experiences that most people don't get together, I think that that's the power in this program.
Well, what's the power? Like, what are they telling you, or what are you seeing in them change when you see them step out of the plane into Montana and look around and see... I mean, even look at like where we are right now in Central Park, right? Like on the reservoir, one of those beautiful places.
Right, but think if you've never seen this before, like then you start to think how much bigger the world is, what else is out there, what have you been missing, what can you go after? I think it changes your whole trajectory.
They open their eyes, they see these mountains, they see the country, they see no people.
Yeah, then they think they'll die, and we work on that. We're like, hey, ride these ATVs, go hunt these animals, and...
Is there hunting involved?
We give them the whole experience. Nah, there's no hunting involved, man. No.
No guns.
But I think, well, it's different for everybody, right? So we have 16 gentlemen in the program at a time, and so I'm very focused on the fact of making sure that they're all comfortable and knowing that I don't have an expectation for them to have this experience in the same way. I'm not looking for all of them to see the situation in the same way. That's not the goal.
Right.
I know that there's 16 different narratives taking place all at once. For me, it's the fact that they are in a situation where they're taking on this powerful first experience. They're doing something they never thought they would do. They're in a space that they never thought that they would be in. So that challenges a lot of the way they see the world. And I found that with them, and I think with anybody that takes on powerful first experiences, because we had guides and we have other folks that were a part of the program, the empathy starts to build. You start to, have more empathy. You start to see the world from a different perspective. I think also when a gentleman from the inner city steps into a space like Montana and does ATV riding and horseback riding and hiking, they build and connect to a completely different community through those experiences, right? Because if I'm from New York City and I go to Montana, but I decline to take on certain experiences, I think what ends up happening is that I don't get connected to different communities. But if I go ice climbing, which I did, and some powerful first experiences are meant to be done once and never done again, and that's ice climbing. But
that's hard ice climbing.
Oh, it is. it's something different. But now I'm connected to this community that loves the ice climb.
You did that in Montana?
Yeah, I did it in Montana in the winter.
You can do that up here in New Paltz if you want. We can go up.
But it's Montana, baby. It's Montana. It's different.
Yep.
But yeah, so, these experiences are different. And I think ultimately they learn how to tell better stories. They have a different story to tell, right? It's not your typical cliche story about coming from the inner city or coming from one space and staying in it. They can talk to you about staying in Rhode Island, having duck for the first time, meeting CEOs, both male, female, meeting, all different types of folks from different backgrounds. So it just adds to their narrative and to their storytelling, which I think is powerful.
What was a powerful first experience that you had that helped you realize the power of a powerful first experience?
Oh, man. Clearest example. A few months ago, I think it was in October, I went to Montana to a conference, and I ended up being the open speaker. And I, after the conference, went for a quick hike with one of the other attendees. Mm-hmm. And it was snowing at the time.
And this is in the summer it was snowing?
No, this is in October.
Oh, October.
So we're hiking up, and I'm just looking around me, and it's just nothing but snow. It's empty. It's just all clear, right? And the mountains are off on the sides. And I laid down, and I made my first snow angel at 31 years old, man. You don't touch snow in New York when you're from here. But I made a snow angel for the first time in Montana, and in that moment, that to me was a powerful first experience, and it made me realize how my gentlemen feel. And so I've talked about powerful first experiences before that, but that snow angel really solidified the feeling. Like this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is how the gentlemen feel, and it just gave me.
Can you describe the feeling?
Yeah, it feels, and it might be different for all the G's or anyone, but for me, it really felt like the whole world changed. Like my entire perspective changed on the world, and that it was energizing, and it made me realize that there's so much more to go after. So I actually, after making that snow angel, decided to create another gentleman's retreat, but in Montana. And so 6 or 7 months later,
that's why you had the one in Montana.
Yeah, we just had our retreat in Montana.
So
that's how powerful
you went
something
out to
like
Montana
that is.
for the first time,
right,
in October.
Correct.
And it was such an incredible experience. Like, I got to get the gentleman out here.
Exactly. And I actually I was supposed to leave 4 days. I was supposed to leave or be at that conference for 4 days, and I ended up staying for 8, and I ended up canceling my flight twice because that powerful first experience just kept me there. And I ended up going to Yellowstone with a good friend of mine that's a scientist that works out of there, and I saw a bison from 2 feet away. And yeah.
You can see that at the Bronx Zoo, man. They have bison there.
At Yellowstone? It's different, man. It's different. From 2 feet away, I looked the bison in the eye, and I was scared. I'll be honest with you. I was scared to the point where I couldn't even really keep eye contact with the bison. And so, I'm looking right out the window, and my friend is like, well, you're supposed to look at the bison. I'm like, I'm looking at the bison.
Oh, you were in a car?
Yeah, I was in a car. But the bison,
You're supposed to get out and pet it.
You should?
Yeah. Next time
I'll take you, and you can try that. And if it works, and that's your powerful first experience, then I've done my job. No, but that was the first time.
Go up and pet its tummy.
No. Listen, man, 2 feet is perfect in a car. It's enough. But it was the first time for me that fear actually turned into respect. And so I was scared of the bison at first, but then I realized it's not going to do anything to me, and I'm not trying to harm it. I'm just respectful of the fact of how powerful this animal is and this creature is, and how the mystique about it. And so it's things like that you learn through these powerful first experiences. You learn a lot. Empathy, maturity, there's just a lot that goes into when you take on these powerful first experiences. And my job as a choice architect, has evolved into now traveling and curating these experiences for the gentlemen. So taking on different experiences like going to Yellowstone, ice climbing, horseback riding, going out to Europe, trying different foods, staying in different spaces, and really looking at it from the lens of how is a gentleman from the inner city going to respond to this? What should stay? What should we take out? What should we tweak to make sure that this experience is going to be a great one for them, or an experience that's going to teach them something, but not make them so vulnerable that they'll shut down and want to leave. And a lot of that is, choice architecture.
So when a gentleman from the inner city experiences eating duck for the first time? What's their reaction?
Gentlemen from the inner city love duck. I don't know what it is, but if you get duck in front of gentlemen from the inner city, it works, and they love it. I think what happens is, one, I think they feel...
What are they used to eating?
I mean, they eat all types of food. They eat fast food. They get home cooked.
Yeah,
they get home cooked meals. But it's something about being in a fancy restaurant and having duck. Now, these are the things that they listen to in music and they've seen on, on television or in the movies. And when you give it to them, they react in a very positive way. But for me, kind of the strategy is to give them a lot of these luxurious experiences, but then it actually becomes a process of elimination where they start to realize that they don't really need these things, right? Because like if you've never had something, like let's say I won $1 million. Don't know what $1 million feels like. I want it.
That would be a powerful first experience.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to get $1 million. I got you. I'm putting it into the universe right now. But how I feel about it and how it actually will be are two very different things. And so when I get the $1 million, there might be a whole bunch of other things that I'm not thinking about that are going to correspond to this $1 million or happen because of this $1 million that I haven't prepared for in my mind. I'm just thinking $1 million and this is what the feeling is. And so what I found is that when they take on these different powerful first experiences, when I put them in these different environments, it becomes a process of elimination for them to find out what they really want out of life, who they really are, and how they want to go about being themselves in the world. And it's a beautiful experience.
Is it, and obviously, as you said, it's different for each gentleman to say, I've had this duck and this makes me realize that I want more duck in my life. Or like I don't really. The duck was nice, but like I don't really need to dedicate myself to
exactly.
more duck. But,
exactly. And they might try some bison, and then they might say, "Listen, I really like meeting that bison yesterday. I can't do this anymore."
Right.
It's the different levels of the experience.
But is it something about? Because all these are very luxurious experiences.
Yeah.
Is there something are there some things that aren't? Like, have you ever taken them out like rugged camping, like?
Yeah, so not
things like that.
Yeah, not rugged camping, but
more of a glamping experience.
Right. So that's how we started off. We started off at Paws Up, and that's ultimate glamping.
Yeah.
And then we went to a lake house, but then ultimately at the last day of the retreat, they went to Time Miner Basin, and Time Miner Basin it's Montana. Mm-hmm. It's family ranch. It's animals everywhere, horses everywhere. It's ranchers. It's legacy. Family legacy is built around Time Miner Basin, and so. Yeah, they slept in a teepee. It was completely different. And they made s'mores. And we had s'mores. Listen, you're welcome to Montana anytime, brother. S'mores. They made their first s'mores around a fire, and they had conversation, and they chatted, and they talked about kind of the overall experience of the retreat. So we balance, What my goal is when I step into different spaces like Rhode Island or Montana or Europe is to find that balance between some of the luxury, but then some of what makes it like what it is. Like, what are those experiences that are just from London? What are those experiences that are just from like Montana? It's always with us about balance.
And how do they feel once when the retreat's over and they go back to the inner city?
So I think they feel energized. I think they feel like they've learned something different about themselves and that they have this community that's now backing them, because that's the other positive of the program is that they're meeting people in different spaces, so now they have these outlets, right? They're no longer just confined to the inner city. They can pick up a phone and call one of the donors in Montana, and the donor in Montana will set something up so they can come out, or Rhode Island, or these other spaces that we're stepping into. So I think for these gentlemen, they come back really energized. They come back excited about life and excited about the fact that they've been validated, which is what I said in the beginning, is that you don't get validated when you embrace education, at least in certain parts when you come from the inner city. So you're around these individuals that are doing the exact same thing you're doing, taking on these experiences with you. You have access to this community, and you have this whole array of different powerful first experiences that are now in kind of your memories and in your database. I want to be a gentleman, man.
Yeah, I'd like to be a gentleman too. So I got so many questions. I'm not sure what order to ask them in.
You should ask me what I define a gentleman as.
That was going to be the next question.
I read your mind, brother. See?
Well, I was debating between that here. I'm going to give you the questions, and then you can decide which order to answer them in. So the first question is, how do you define what a gentleman is?
Nice.
And the other question I had was, when these gentlemen have these experiences, are they thinking to themselves, wow, there's a whole other world out there that I didn't know existed. Mm-hmm. I want to go out and experience that world and then leave the inner city. Mm-hmm. Or do they want to come back and improve the inner city?
So I'll tackle the second one first. Ultimately, they want to leave the inner city. So I'm very adamant about the fact that the gentlemen that we recruit and we find already have a lot of grit, already have a certain level of emotional and conversational intelligence, so they're going to be successful. What we do is we maximize that success based off the relationships that we help them build, the schools that we help them get into, and then the experiences that we give them. Whether or not they want to come back to the inner city and create a program or invest or help, that's up to them. My focus is to just help them become the best gentleman that they can be. Mm-hmm. When it comes to what I define a gentleman as, to me, a gentleman is anyone that has emotional and conversational intelligence. I feel like the blend of those two are very, very powerful, and it's the bedrock of the curriculum for the program. And emotional intelligence, being able to kind of identify your emotions and identify that others have emotions, and then being able to navigate that. And then also conversational intelligence, understanding that when you're in conversation like how we are now, that it isn't just me kind of putting words together and creating a sentence, but there's more of a physiological exchange happening, right? So based off what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, we're either going to bond and there's going to be that dopamine and oxytocin between us, or I'm going to say some things that are hurtful or wrong, and it's going to put you in fight or flight mode, which means that we wouldn't be able to finish this podcast. So I find the blend of those two to be what, to me, equates a gentleman. But all the G's define it differently. If you ask any of the G's...
How are some of the ways that they define it that you've heard?
Some of them will tell you is somebody who, respects everyone no matter what. Somebody who's very focused on their goal and wants to be successful and wants to take care of others. Some people will define it as somebody who has a vision and builds on that vision and is relentless. But I think ultimately all the G's have the component of respect for one another, for everybody around you, and ultimately the conversational and the emotional intelligence. And to me, a G is anybody, it doesn't matter your race, your religion, your gender, your non-gender, your socioeconomic status, your education, or your political views. None of that, to me, matters. It's about, can you create other experiences or powerful first experiences for others? And if you do that, to me, that makes you a G. And we just need more G's in the world,
So what are some things that people can do outside of going on one of these incredible retreats to cultivate these qualities in themselves? And by the way, just to go back to something you said about the conversational intelligence, one of the reasons I like to do these podcasts on a walk or a run is that I find that when you're walking with somebody, or running with somebody, but walking with somebody, our steps are in the same rhythm, our breath is in sync, we're moving in the same direction, the oxytocin's going back and forth between us. It's a totally different conversation than if we're like sitting across from each other at like a table. It's kind of like oppositional, but like our bodies are in like rhythm together. It's kind of like when you play sports with somebody, it's like a conversation, but like just I always find that I have better conversations on a walk or a run than just like sitting around.
No, I like it. It's my first podcast and I'm enjoying the view. So.
You got a great face for podcasts.
Hey, thank you. I've been told that many times. I'm actually a little upset though.
Why?
Actually, I'll save it for the end.
Well, you can't save it. It's like
it can't be the ending for the podcast?
Okay, if you want. I'll leave that to the ending. It's like that's an open loop for all you out there. That's called an open loop.
Open loop?
An open loop. It's like in a TV show or something where like they hint that something's gonna happen, but then they like cut to something else. You're like, whoa,
I like that. Yeah, open loop for the audience.
So now like it keeps you engaged, or it's like when you're watching a TV show and it's like they solve whatever it is that they're gonna solve, and then like right at the end like some other crazy thing happens. It's like, oh my god, but then what? And you like can't wait for next week until.
I love it.
So what are some of the things that we can do outside of going on one of these retreats? I guess either to give ourselves powerful first experiences.
I think that's a big part, is stepping into as many powerful first experiences as you can, because like I said, it develops the empathy, it develops your network, it allows you to see the world differently, but most importantly, it gives you these amazing stories to connect with people about. So through the powerful first experiences I've had, I'm now connected to amazing individuals all throughout Europe, amazing individuals in Montana, amazing individuals in Providence. You, my man, holding the mic for this podcast. But that's all, mic. Right? But that's all through these powerful first experiences.
But so do you, and it could be both, it's not an either or question.
Yeah.
You called yourself a choice architect.
Yes.
So you're very purposeful in saying, this is an experience that I want. I'm going to create this, I'm going to architect and create this experience. And, or to what extent is it, hey, I just met this guy who wandered into our office in Rhode Island that wants to pitch Alex and Ani, and he's saying, hey, let's grab lunch. Let's have lunch. Like, to what extent is it kind of random that can create a powerful first experience?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to make a snow angel now. You never would have guessed that making a snow angel was going to be...
I think it's both. I think it's just choice, right? You can be intentional with it or it just happens. I think ultimately the way life works is that powerful first experiences and certain things will just happen to you.
But you have to put yourself out there.
Right. So what I would say is just have that open mind to take on more powerful first experiences. Because you know the routine. You get so caught up in what you do day to day that it's hard to step out and do something differently. You can do 9 to 5 and then get home at 7 and make dinner and hang out with the family and then go to bed and wake up, and that's the rest of your life.
Right.
So I'm challenging individuals, or I'm challenging the G's to just kind of get used to doing things a little bit differently from time to time and stepping outside of their comfort zone. I think the other thing too is with my program, I'm trying to put emphasis on the fact that you don't need money to offer these powerful first experiences, because you're offering me a powerful first experience right now, which is a podcast. Yeah, which is a walk. Doesn't cost money. And so I'm challenging individuals to really think about the powerful first experiences they've had, and then to figure out how to bring those to kids from the inner city, and then just other people who don't have access to it. And there's something beautiful about people coming together from different spaces and taking on powerful first experiences together. I think one of the things I learned in Montana is it reminds the community that's giving the powerful first experience to the gentlemen about the first time that they did something. Right? So the first time I got on the horse and I'm like, whoa, hold on. That reaction reminded the person that was giving me the experience of, man, I remember my first day on the horse. Or like when I went ice climbing, I'm yelling at the top of my lungs, don't drop me. How everybody that was on the ground was like, I remember the first time. That was my reaction. So that kind of thing. Also,
I like that.
I just want to give you a point of advice if you're like ever ice climbing.
Okay.
The most difficult part is not getting up, it's coming down.
Really? Why is that?
Yeah, because you have to lean back and kind of be suspended.
Yeah.
But don't be scared because it feels like a hug, man. It's incredible. I was scared for like 45 minutes. Man.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, this feels like a hug.
That's cool.
So
I've never been ice. I've been regular climbing, and I know, the experience where you're at the top and you're getting belayed down. You kind of just got to let go and trust that they got you. And it's kind of like a scary. I remember first time I did that was in 8th grade. Kind of my school had a thing where it took us out to go camping, and there was a climbing thing to it, and it was so scary to you're standing at the top of the cliff and you got to sit back and trust that this thing is going to hold you.
Yeah.
But my wife is a big rock climber. That's
really?
her thing.
Wow.
That's
She's
all
brave, man.
That's she likes to do. If you want powerful first experience, we'll go up to New Paltz. She'll take all the kids climbing.
Listen,
all the gentlemen climbing.
Listen, I would love that, because one of the things that we focus on in the program is actually incorporating women, very powerful women that are outdoors, women that are in the offices. So I would love that. No, honestly, because I found, at least for me, that gentlemen essentially have that balance of masculinity and femininity, and so it's important to have women play a role. Because I came from a strong woman,
right?
And so a lot of my leadership qualities, a lot of the good traits, came from my mom. So I've always been very focused on that.
Let's do that. Let's get a group. We can take them up to New Paltz, which is only 90 minutes from here.
All right.
And my wife, she's a rock climbing instructor, so she knows everything, and get all the gentlemen out on the rock.
Let's do it. I'm down.
That would be awesome.
All right.
I could take them, if any of them want to go trail running, I can take them trail running.
Let's do it, man. Raise some money for charity miles.
There you go. That would be awesome. No, I've never been ice climbing before, but I've seen people do it.
You should do it. You should do it once.
Yeah.
And never again. And that's me. I'll take on some extreme powerful first experiences once, but I know how to say no the second time.
Well, one of the things, for me personally, I really am trying to develop new experiences in my life. That's been like a big resolution of mine for the year. So like this year, I took up ice hockey this winter. I never played hockey before. Tried that. Been trying to learn how to do yoga, trying to do chin-ups. So I've never done any of that stuff before.
Nice.
So I think the chin-ups will be important for the ice climbing. So I probably need to train a little bit for that. But I'm really trying to do new experiences and then reconnecting with old friends, which is why I'm glad that we reconnected.
My man.
That's awesome. So, so I like that you were talking about the impact that it's having on the hosts in Montana.
Correct. And in Providence, too.
And in Providence.
Yeah,
like, how are they impacted by the experience?
It's an emotional experience for me watching their reactions because to me it's just incredible. It's a beautiful feeling to see a stranger meet a gentleman from the inner city for the first time and automatically have this connection and be so happy about the joy that they're seeing in the face of the gentleman. So I think the donors and the individuals in Montana and the individuals in Rhode Island and then now the individuals in Europe, I think a lot of them are just intrinsically motivated, which we're lucky. We vet and we find very intrinsically.
How do you find these people and connect with them and enlist them in this mission, this vision, I should say?
To be honest with you, Gene, I feel my energy.
Cosmically connected?
Yeah, I feel like it's my energy. It's how I carry myself, and I'm very humbled by it. But I'm lucky enough to attract really great people and people that really care about this program. And it isn't just they want to write a check, but they want to write a check and actually be invested emotionally and physically, which I appreciate because I feel like that's what's going to propel and change the world is people actually going out and doing the work and coming together. So I think the return on investment is the intrinsic feeling that a lot of the donors and a lot of the supporters get. Because our in-kind, we get a lot of in-kind. It's honoring how much in-kind we get.
What are some first experiences that you haven't yet had that you would personally like to have?
Running with the Charity Miles app, we got to do that. But we got to run. We got to run in Europe
the Charity
somewhere.
Miles app, but you're not running, are you? You're walking.
No, I wanted to run. Remember when you asked me to do the podcast?
You want to run the New York
first?
City Marathon this year?
When is it?
November. We can get you in shape. First week in November.
Well, I'm going to Europe in September, so I'm gonna come back.
They have roads in Europe. All that good food, you're gonna have to run. Stay fit.
Come on, the pasta. I don't know. We
You
gotta
eat
talk
all
about
that
this.
pasta, you're gonna, you might as well run it.
I need my carbs, man.
Exactly. You eat the carbs.
All right.
The more you run, the more carbs you get to eat.
I think about that. That might be too much of a powerful first experience. That's the other thing too. You got to learn how
That
to
is a
pick and
powerful
choose.
first experience.
Yeah, you got to pick and choose, man.
All right. So other than the marathon, what's a powerful first experience that you're looking to have?
That I want to have personally, or for the G's.
Both. Either.
So one that I'm working on now, and I think it's a collection of experiences, but it's taking them out to Europe. It's taking them to Paris, taking them to London. And then I also got to spend some time in Tel Aviv, so taking them to Tel Aviv at some point.
Tel Aviv is such a cool city.
Beautiful. And I think, the program is evolving as the gentlemen, grow up and mature and they step out from high school and go to college. And then I have G's who in the next year and a half to 2 years will be men working in whatever profession they want to work in. And so it's important to start figuring out what the college version of the Gentlemen's Retreat looks like. So, powerful first experience that we haven't taken on is the build out of the college version of the program, which is taking them out to Europe, connecting them to different experiences. I'm trying to think. One for me. I think I recently just did it. I did archery for the first time, and they had they had this. They had the 3D dinosaur that was like 28 or 30 yards out. Caught him right in the eye. It was a great feeling.
Shooting a dinosaur in the eye?
Yeah, it wasn't real though, but it was awesome, man. Have you done archery before?
When I was a kid.
You got to try it. You got to try it. So just hitting the bullseye a couple times.
Where did you do that?
I did it at one of those. It's like the archery gyms or the shootout places.
In New York?
No, this was in Montana. I'm not doing archery.
At an archery range.
Yeah.
There's an archery something. I think it's in Brooklyn.
Really?
It's got to be in Brooklyn. I mean, where else would it be in Brooklyn?
This was in Montana, man.
They've got like axe throwing in Brooklyn. All the cool stuff is happening.
I'm a little scared about the axe, but hit a your first couple tries, you hit a dinosaur bullseye like 28, 30 yards out. That's a good feeling.
Archery.
Archery, man. So I'm going to incorporate that into the program. And I'm trying to think, what else? I don't know, man. I can't come up with something else off the top of my head.
Just got to put yourself out there into the universe.
Yeah. I mean, I'm traveling, curating these experiences, so I'm going to go to Venice at some point. So I think, figuring
Venice, California, or Venice, Italy?
Italy, yeah. So figuring out kind of...
When are you going to Europe?
I go to Europe 1st of September to the 15th. So
Nice.
I'm in Paris, I'm in Venice, I'm in London for most of my trip because that's where we're building out the retreat, like building the relationships. And then I come back.
Pretty nice. Where else are you going in it? You're going to be... Italy's awesome.
My first time. Powerful first, man. Like
Powerful
I said.
first. Italy's a great country. I like that. Great food.
I go wherever I'm invited.
So how do you get invited to all these places?
Luck. I go to these conferences and I'll speak for 4 or 5 minutes and talk about the program, talk about powerful first experiences.
So you're a public speaker too, which I think we forgot to mention. You developed like you've been doing it for a long time. As long as I've known you, you've been doing these public speeches.
But I think I've paid attention to it for the last maybe 3-4 years, but I have been doing it for a while. But just because when I was at Alex and I, it was part of the job description.
Right.
It wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to do or knew I was good at. Mm-hmm. But yeah, communication.
So how did you get at Alex and I? They're just like, hey, we'd like you to speak.
Pretty much, man. That's how my life works. I got to Alex and Ani through relationships. Like I told you, being at Providence College really taught me about developing relationships. Because I had to in order to learn the things that I didn't know and learn how the system worked and, build relationships with my professors and just watch kind of the exchange of all that helped me become successful and graduate. So, yeah, I met some folks at Alex and Ani. They were impressed with my background and I stepped in as a presentation designer and didn't know one thing about presentation design. And ended up at one point becoming one of the only 20-25 experts in the world in Prezi, which was a very good feeling.
What's Prezi for the people out there who don't know?
Prezi is a more sophisticated version of PowerPoint. So it uses a Zoom user interface. And so instead of you just having slides, you actually have movement within your presentation.
Right.
So it just makes it more dynamic. It's definitely something that grabs the audience's attention, especially if it's their first time seeing something like that. So yeah, I've been using that tool probably 5 years now.
And you're also a TED resident.
I was a
You were a TED resident?
Yeah, I was a TED resident. So class of 2019, that was excellent. I was working on a TED talk about powerful first experiences, but declined to give that talk, and I'm going to actually end up giving it during my TEDx in Providence, which I'm excited about.
When is that?
That is October 5th in Providence at the Vet. And I'm excited about that. 1,200 people from all over New England.
The gentlemen coming up for that?
Some of them are, yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. I've been working on the talk since, I think February, maybe March. So yeah, just keep practicing and get it to be natural and execute.
That's awesome,
Be
man.
a TEDx speaker. And then a couple other conferences that I may be at that I'll get an opportunity to talk. But I'm really big on this whole idea of not only the Gentlemen's Retreat and scaling it and getting into 9 other cities, so we have 10 in total, and then creating 10 chapters in other countries, but just people in general focusing more on powerful first experiences and the exchange of powerful first experiences.
So how many gentlemen are in the...
So right now we have 16 gentlemen in the program, but 48 will be graduating out of the program by next year. So we're at 32 graduates right now.
32
grads, and there's 16 in the program right now. So
okay. And then how many come in each year?
So each year, anywhere between maybe 8 or 9 come in.
And what's the process for them to get in?
So they have to, when we started 2.5 years ago, they had to write an essay about what a gentleman was. And a gentleman, like I told you, could be male, female, non-binary, however you want to define it. But you have to talk about the principles. And then how you yourself embrace and kind of showcase those principles. And then the second thing you had to do, which I loved the most, was you had to send in a video that was about 1 to 2 minutes. And you had to talk about what you could offer the program. And so very, very early on in the program, we're already using language specifically. We want them to start to realize that it's not only about receiving, but also what they can get and what they can give. So how are you seeing yourself?
And how many potential gentlemen apply to the program?
So when we started, I think we had a batch of like 30, 35 applications, but we only had 16 slots. But one of the
What's
things...
the cap on how many you can have? Like, what sets the cap?
Why is it 16?
Yeah.
I just always like that number.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
16.
I'm giving all my secrets out, charity.
Okay.
No. But yeah, I just always like that number. But we're going to tweak it. We might turn it to 20. We might turn it into 10. But 16 has been working very well for us over the last 2.5 years. But I stopped doing the choosing of the gentlemen and actually empowered my gentlemen. So my gentlemen now choose the next cohort of gentlemen coming into the program. And so once again, I'm being very
awesome.
I'm being very specific, and I'm paying attention to just the things that I want them to learn very early on. And when you are somebody who's 15, 16 years old and you're in charge of bringing this new cohort in, you learn about credibility, you learn about responsibility. And it's just amazing to be in a space like an office and watching them go through the process of elimination and who's going to be put, on hold for next year, who's coming into the program and why, and what are the pros and cons. And these are 15, 16-year-old, 17-year-old kids or gentlemen, but they're doing something very sophisticated, So,
could you see it being more? Could you see it being like 100 gentlemen?
Of course. Yeah, the goal is 10 cities, increase it to 20 gentlemen. So that's 200 G's right there. And then figure out this whole international component, whether it's I build out, 5 or 6 or maybe 10 chapters in other countries. And then, like I told you earlier, I envision kind of this map where there's a specific weekend or the specific week where you have this massive exchange. You have G's from all, from certain cities in the U.S. heading out to Europe or different places. And then you have G's from Europe and other places outside the country coming to the U.S. And they're all embarking on this gentleman's retreat. And then ultimately having kind of this global summit in Montana, of course, because you got to ride the horses and ice climb. But bringing the donors and all of these G's together to create this amazing space.
So what do you need in order to do that?
So we need...
How do you go from 16 in New York and the Bronx to 10 cities, you said?
Right, 10 cities. Well, 9 cities altogether, so 10. Support, so we're talking to some organizations. The most important thing outside of cash or money is you need to have the infrastructure. So I have to have a community in that city or in that country, right? That can help me connect to different folks and help me build out the retreat and take on the powerful first experiences. Then you need kind of the expenses to be covered. So the food and the housing and the transportation. So like I said, I've been lucky. I've been able to step into spaces like Providence and Montana and parts of Europe and get that infrastructure set up very, very quickly. The powerful first experiences, the housing, the food, and the transportation. Because it's really all about the community. If you can get a community behind you, you can build anything. I like this podcast.
Me too, man. All right, so as we kind of, what are some things to just play off of that last point? What are some things that the people out there listening can do to help you?
So I would say think about powerful first experiences that you could offer and reach out to me at gentlemensretreat.org. Just go to contact, all my info is there. I think telling your friends, donating what you can donate, and going out into the world and taking on powerful first experiences for yourself.
All right, and now just to wrap it up, what was it that we got to close that open loop?
So the activity app on the Apple Watch?
Yeah.
I didn't click outdoor walk, man. I lost so many calories right now. It's not counting. I'm so mad.
But we got our charity miles going, so it's all good.
For sure.
All right, Kenneth, this has been great. I'm just so glad that we reconnected last week. That we got to get this podcast. I know everyone out there is going to be truly inspired to hear this.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Powerful first experiences, everybody.
Yes, and to everybody listening, we love you. Powerful first experiences. Please go out there, be gentlemen, and take on as many powerful firsts as you can.
Every mile matters. Thanks, Ken.